Howdy. I've got something to show you and I'm excited about it. But first, my name is Lynn Miller. For 46 years, I've done the Small Farmers Journal. I've authored 8 books on animal power. Enough about me. I'm really excited about this. Imagine 10 horses in 5 pair. Each team on the incline walking inside of its own short, wooden railed treadmill. The treadmills are hooked sideways to power takeoff drive lines, offering torque and scalable RPMs to power stationary machine systems. It's an exciting idea. I can't tell you how important it is for us to think about and see the variations that are possible in the modular nature of animal power. On the particular day of this photograph, this stationary power source was filling a tall silo. It's in remote Kentucky, USA, just a few days ago. In Oregon, 100 miles away from us, up and over our mountain range, we know a woman on a small family farm, and I can imagine that today she's forking rich compost of her own making into a waiting manure spreader to which are hitched a pair of draft horse mares. These horses stand in quiet, comfortable attention as she, their teamster, leans steadily into the rhythm of loading. On the farm, she and her horses have done this particular job, this procedure, hundreds of times. She's a master of the work, and the horses are masters of their participation. She knows how to pile the wet, fibrous material slightly away from the spreading beaters at the rear of the implement. After the machine is loaded, when they return to the field to spread, the horses know from routine that the first bit of forward motion will be easy. And then the compost mass will creep backwards slowly, clicking along on the conveyor bed until it makes contact with the beater assembly and the draft is increased. The mares know to lean forcefully into their collars at this point, and to also ignore the flying bits of compost and the racket. Those manure spreaders can make a lot of noise. And imagine, if you were, that you're a horse and harnessed and bridled, and coming up over your ears and across the front of your face are all these dark, wet, hairy looking bits of stuff landing on you. It takes an awful lot for those horses to learn the patience to deal with that. In this scene, the woman is seated at the front of the implement and behind her work mares. They are a unit, a power unit. With this chore, the compost load slowly decreases in draft until all the material has been spread evenly over a chosen path across the field. This farmer is feeding her field, feeding her soil. The compost she applies, which she made from livestock manures, green matter, and bedding materials, is the richest and healthiest plant food imaginable. And it is the cheapest. Its cost is labor. It is a plant food accessible to anyone who joins the pattern, joins the rhythm, flexes and allows communion with nature and work. It does, however, require knowledge and faith that it will work. Knowledge and faith, two things which are potentially deepened by communion with others who do similar work. Her chosen power source, these workhorses, she knows with intense intimacy. Over decades, she has learned that their comfort gives her certainty and it defines her small farm. The working union is also a path she feels every single day with these horses. It is one of the wider passageways open to her in this complete partnership with the immediate natural world. I know her world, her choices, her ease, her difficulty, because my own work has mirrored that world. For nearly half a century, our family had depended upon workhorses to get field work done. Our effort was separate and away. She, the teamster over the mountains, was not an example to us, nor were we to her. Yes, we shared knowledge and values. As with thousands of others far and wide, we are not examples to one another so much as we are parallel. We are assurance. Yes, we are friends, the woman over the mountain and we millers on this side, though we are distant from one another. The fact that we share values and a working lifestyle gives us membership in a far-flung and thin web of farmers. Yet in some poignant and remarkable ways, the distance wants to deny us aggregated strength. When my horses see things in the distance, I notice, and eventually I see the same things. When they smell, they tell me they smell. When they hear, I see their lovely ears turn and lock on to sounds which are inaudible to me. When he twitches, I see that before ever seeing the flying insect which caused his reaction. With a gentle roll of the wrist, I move to flick the insect from the gelding's hip with the driving line. If I'm successful, I see the immediate relaxation in his ears. My horses and I work together in ways both small and large. It is a gently sensorial world available to all who work with draft animals. The dairy farmer in Louisiana would not take his Belgians to the field during fly season without his fly nets. And that potato farmer in Maine knows how important the ear covers are that his wife knitted. Without them, the flies distract his Suffolk horses so much they cannot concentrate on the rows. The mule man in Kentucky makes sure that every morning, before he harnesses, he gently wipes his secret fly repellent concoction of herbs and fruit peel oils over the surface of each of his magnificent sorrel teammates. In upstate New York, the Amishman stands behind his 6 harnessed workhorses as they eat their morning ration, listening. He listens to them eat ahead of the day's field work. He is smiling and saying a prayer of gratitude for his workmates. Over half a century, I have worked with many horses and mules, and I've known thousands of teamsters. In no small part, that's because of the Small Farmers Journal, which has taken me all across North America doing workshops and presentations and meeting with people. Within that breadth of experience, I've felt repeated assurances that both the equine and the human elements were always exactly where they wanted to be and defined magnificently by their work together. Ironic. On the world stage, to many, animal power is a curiosity and a silly, nostalgic notion, while to others it is an exotic and thrilling idea. Animal power is both an answer and, curiously, an incredibly powerful lost leader. The view of working animals touches magnetic chords within people whose genetic memory of a difficult and rewarding handmade agriculture has faded to the slightest calloused glimmer. But animal power seldom remains as a bit of nostalgia or as that lost leader. It often quickly becomes a living, working symbol of independence and human-scaled endeavor. I received a phone call from an Indiana Amishman yesterday, a friend of mine, and he mentioned that his brother's horse kicked him and it would take a while to heal up. Then we spoke of recent draft horse market prices and how weanling Belgian fillies were still commanding $6,000 and higher. And we both lamented on how those prices, while good for the horse breeders, were a difficult hurdle for young people starting out. And he said that small Indiana farms of good soil were selling for $25,000 an acre. We scratched our heads together over the phone. Implicit for me was the paradox. I insist every day that these methods, this land, and these animals, so well suited for work, must be seen as of a higher value Yet here we are. We worry of their selling prices being so high. And then the day after, I visited with my neighbor and friend Mike about his trek to Missouri and Iowa to sell and purchase draft horses at the big auction sales. He trailered a nice team of exceedingly well-broke Belgians 2,000 miles to see them sell at auction for $15,000 at Waverly. And then to watch while a well-trained red-roan pair of Brabant mares brought $23,000 in Missouri. High prices, but still far below the cost of new machinery. Having been at this draft horse market business for 50 years, again I scratched my head briefly and found myself chuckling because every day now we watch our money lose value, while the best work animals in today's market hold and move up. Another piece of evidence that animal power is barely at the front porch of its future importance. The horse farmers who breed and start good animals know the secret. I have owned exceptional Belgian mares that I gave good money for, only to find after 10 years and more that the work they gave me, the shape they put my fields and farm into, and the foals they brought into the world had those mares amounting to 20 times or more what I had invested. In North America, 15 good productive years with a single fertile workhorse mare can generate from $20,000 to $45,000 in value. That's one mare. Imagine two. So how can anyone know what a price should be of something whose future is all out ahead? In the 1970s, workhorse prices went up, and farmers responded by breeding more to sell. Over the 80s and 90s, we saw in North America a dramatic increase in the number of people who chose to depend on animals as a power source. And then a slow decline began in 2000, causing the numbers of workhorses, mules, and oxen to start to taper off. My suspicion is that there were overlaps in these currents because Europe's work animal numbers seemed to grow dramatically from 2000 on, just as the reverse was being seen in North America. In the 80s and 90s, we were approached, we at the Small Farmers Journal, by organizations and governments, including the Ford Foundation, China, and Brazil, to help develop breeding and training programs for work animals for very different populations and cultures. From the ancient small farm plots of Asia to the rainforest and pampas of South America, from the desert farms of the American Southwest reservation lands to North Africa and even Arabia. These markers brought to us the evidence as far back as 30 and 40 years ago that visionary world leaders had parallel notions of small farms re-embracing animal power. That sends me back into something internal, as in like a treasured memory. My great-uncle Ephraim was a supreme farmer. He held close every day the layers of his Minnesota farm. The livestock, each species, the fields at the readiness or usefulness or at the fallow, the ripenings, the remainders, the margins, the rottings, the seeds, the pollen races, the droppings, the absorbent chaff, the everything of this farm world. Close as it all was to him, it required and earned his attention. He could tell you what piece of that field had a shallower topsoil. He could tell you the history of the grandmother of that lovely Guernsey heifer and how it might influence the coming birth. He could predict the bloom of different crops and talk of how the bees affected it all, passing one to the other. He did speak of the strain of legume seed he had carefully gathered and replanted for over a quarter of a century. And he could wax poetic about plowing. In the end, in his 90s, he used a Farmall M tractor, but he could not part with his last team of workhorses and his string of horse-drawn implements. He knew them to be insurance. He took to his grave the sensorial memory of every finest brisk morning behind his beloved walking plow and team. He made of himself a first step towards landed, towards a new indigenous as he was, to a handheld farming. Deep down, many know farming is sacred and it should be treated as a prayer counseled public trust. But most of us now speak on the progressive fringe of the need for a socially responsible agriculture. While, and I ask you to think about this now, while survival demands a biologically responsible agriculture, animal power as an option provides one tool towards that necessary goal. It is supremely accessible if we pay attention to and remind ourselves of our heritage. Heritage. Sometimes it's a simple business, isn't it? Hitch mule, horse, ox, or donkey to an implement and stir the soil. But animal power also defines our farming operations and possibilities in ways both born of limitations and opportunities. The animals suggest to us that we spread our workings out over earlier springs and later falls because we can and because we have traction. And the reality of the width of the working animal or team gives us pause to design our rows and corners and gateways accordingly. And the animals bring their sensitivities to expand what is possible. In hottest Arizona, where raking and baling of hay has to be done at night, trained horses, knowledgeable in the working procedures, excel where they see and feel through the darkness. They see and feel where the work needs to go. Animal power married to a string of implements and the cropping needs of a given farm brings with it great modular opportunity. When we were working 4 teams of horses each day, I knew I had my choice of 8 singles, 2 3 abreast teams, 2 4 abreast teams, 2 4 up teams, or 6 and up to 8 head to pull heavier implements. I knew that when mowing hay with teams, if one horse was not feeling well or sore-shouldered, I could swap out for another to fill in. In the midst of our haying, Bud and Justin would be raking hay with 2 teams while Jess and I drove buck rakes, each pushing 700 pounds of hay to the swinging hay stacker. And if you wonder at the skilled labor demands of such a daily routine, know this, please know this. Every single one of us worked at these jobs as volunteers, thrilled for the time and experience. And we did that for decades. There was nowhere else we would rather be. Any idle horses on our farm were crowded at the fence lines, watching and wondering why they weren't invited. Eric and Ann Nordell, farming in Pennsylvania, found that 1 and 2 horses provided the perfect motive power interface with their astounding, evolving, intensive market garden. They fed the soil to grow the crops in multi-year crop rotation systems, which gave them time and place to work the horses they love at jobs they adore, all in a regenerative program of true sustainability. Wow, talk about a convergence of motivation. In my many travels throughout the American Midwest, slow meanders through dense horse-powered Amish settlements always engaged my measuring brain in the apparent web of economy, thrift, and right livelihood. One strength of these settlements was clearly the aggravating of so many farmers of similar values and choices. Beyond the legendary cooperative aspects of having neighbors ready, willing, and able to assist in harvest work were the smaller barter details. Many, if not most, of the transactions in Amish country are farmers selling to neighbors, to the neighboring farmers, products, services, livestock, implements. So many horse farmers within an 18-mile circle meant ease at finding single trees, harness parts, farriers, colts, and plow parts. The economies and the economics were real, genuine, and firmly seated on seasonal cycles of need and necessity. And the gratitudes, my goodness, did they and do they flow. And that's what I'm talking about. The way forward? With the challenges of animal power and small-scale farming and organic practices and access to land and availability of equipment, each candidate farmer needs to know where to look. How to make that happen? It's not a question you throw money at, it's a need we all must gather around. Where do you go for plowshares for that walking plow? Where do you go to get those seeds or tools or parts? Who do you go to ask how to fix things, find things, borrow things? Has anyone done this before? Has anyone failed at this as bad as I have? Has there ever been any success at this? Is anyone making a new walk behind cedar or a narrow hay rake or a mower for draft animals? Where to get livestock, blades, plow points, incantations, seedlings, secret ingredients, collars, hatching eggs, and suitable stories. We need the young in the furrows, listening to and tasting the soil. We need them to learn how to follow living power sources, to follow the sun, to follow the rains, to follow the plants and insects, to follow grazing animals, to go where their honorable hungers and comforts and joys might take them. It won't happen with directives, laws, money, or the outcome of wars. They aren't likely to follow examples or logic, but the view of others making it happen will give them silent and thrilling permission, and the result will be increasing numbers of people moving in similar directions, aggregating into a far-flung galaxy of true farmers working small plots, feeding the soils, plants, livestock, filtering the water in the atmosphere, clothing and warming and sheltering. And we need the old at the workbenches, writing down recipes and information-rich stories, repairing harness, drawing diagrams of garden plans, sketching maps of repeated farm occurrences like where in the fields were most of the calves and lambs born, and the unlikely spot where water was struck that time you dug a hole for a fence post. We need the old folks at the benches preparing homegrown seed for long, safe storage. We need the old, after a morning of tillage work, in at the bench fixing things while they keep a careful eye on that grandchild who's atop the adjacent stool with her own little adjustable wrench. We need the old folks to keep the small local publications going. Those published diaries that chronicle births, deaths, and recipes, fixing weddings and bizarre happenings, like that time the busload of kids from Boston turned the sheep loose on a dare. We need that community journalism which speaks as though calmly one to another, for it is there we find our way. We know there are new farmers of limited means who have already found creative ways to land on land, to grow crops and to slap together homes and sheds and fences. Their numbers are growing rapidly. And for old farmers like myself, the view of their efforts is thrilling. With the expansion we are seeing in the small farm sectors around the world comes not only a return to best pre-chemical natural production systems, but also a marriage of those to the most exciting and deeply thought out new organics. And all of that is naturally followed by the intense inquiry into new and improved mechanical systems. At the top of most every new farmer's equipment wish list is a need for the most appropriate and affordable technology and approaches, ones which get the work done without forcing or violating the sensitive and all-important philosophies and values of this new agriculture. Machinery which doesn't holler out that diversity and interrelated crop and livestock programs are too inefficient. Implements that give primacy to soil and the plants and plantations, not machines which scream, "Give me at least 200 acres of tomatoes, please." No. Methods, implements, and power sources, call them inputs, which are justified for the mixed crop and livestock farmer with small acreage and row croppings, orchards, vineyard, woodlot, forage, grains, and perennials. Inputs which fit the procedures the individual farmer wants done in just the right manner. I easily imagine that such tools would not be geared solely for one purpose, such as a vineyard use, but rather applicable, adaptable, and valuable to just about any intensive row crop operation, including a variable spaced raised bed setup in and out of greenhouse cover. With such a system, a quiet, well-trained team of horses would shine, absolutely shine. And the individual farmer would enjoy that heightened awareness of close proximity to work, which some of us continue to believe results in those harmonies that enhance all aspects of the farming experience, including the fertility of the land and the flavor of the food. Some of us, myself included, are at risk of blinding ourselves to new possibilities in horse-drawn implements. We tend to accept that the old stuff works just fine. Why bother with new animal-powered tools? As for the reservoir of engineering knowledge and experience, in some intriguing cases, advances in farm equipment from before 1915 were coming out so fast they saw little opportunity for widespread use. With the pileup of calamity and change in the first half of the 20th century, folks in agriculture leapfrogged over new methods and implements at a destructive pace. Go back far enough and you'll find evidence of exciting form and function our society left too hastily behind. What does that mean for us? I say it means launch pads. Blend the new with the old and the left behind and add the impertinent energies of the young, and the possibilities are staggering. Success awaits. Success, though, will always require we pay close attention to scale and the marriage of individualities to goals. This one man, this single work mare and his potato patch must fit the season's day when the questions include, is it worth seeing if there are spuds in this ground that my digger missed? How can I use Molly to get them out? Over these last 4 decades across North America, Amish businesses and individuals have brought forth exceptional new innovations in animal-powered technology, from hand-powered hydraulic accumulators to refinements in ground drive systems, from motorized forecots to a re-engineering of foot-lift riding plows. Same time frame, we have seen even more remarkable advances come from small shops and businesses in Europe. With the scope and breadth of these additions, there is more evidence of an incredible future for animal power. But these tools cost money, and though there can be no argument against their worth, not everyone can afford them. The world will hopefully remain various, which means there will likely always be areas, regions, communities where resources are unimaginably thin. This translates to our best path forward, embracing once again appropriate technologies, those engineered in their scale to work with what is at hand and with what nature lends us. We need it all, the new and the accessible. Over here, new ox and donkey plows made from rebar and scraps of waste metal. Over there, new horse plows masterfully engineered and constructed of the very best and most appropriate of modern materials. Access to small-scale farming adventures must not be tied to fistfuls of money. It needn't be. Humans throw things away. We discard. With small-scale human-touch farming, I suggest that we need to think about this most carefully. With resources and bankable energies limited, we need to recognize that no exhausted farm implement should ever be undervalued. Early in my horse farming career, I recognized that if I chose a common and readily available make and model of an old horse-drawn implement that worked for me, and then stuck with it, curious and valuable lateral options were available. I have John Deere ground drive hay rakes. Notice I said rakes, plural. I only actually use just one, but I have 4 more in various states of disrepair. I purchased or accepted these knowing they were a treasure trove of parts and information. Parts, that's obvious. But information? My old used-up rakes tell stories. This one had the lifting chain replaced by a bit of cable. This one had 2 metal straps customized to reinforce the supports for the drivetrain hookup to the bar transfer. This one had 3 trail wheels instead of 2. In each instance, the differences have given me information to help to reconfigure the rake I use, or address a portion of the mechanism that seemed more worn than the rest. Extend this view to all of your implement choices, and you discover economies of manner and approach that add aspect to your ability to stay at the work. To appreciate your own inventiveness and to expand notions of profitability to include assurance and understanding. With all the human interest news stories in North America and Europe about young people redefining farming, it may seem like a rapid expansion, perhaps because of the currency and glamour of the subject, but the global expansion of small farm numbers has been entirely too slow and needlessly handcuffed. Today, right this minute, we need billions, yes, I said billions, of enfranchised landed small farmers. We must be about restoration of the place of working humans within the web of biology, allowing genetic memories of a hands-on yeoman farming to rekindle and grow, protecting the heritage and heirloom underpinnings of the craft of farming and the practice of a regenerative agriculture that naturally leans towards such embracing and viable notions as animal power. A vast galaxy of small, diversified, independent farm holdings can and will produce food, fiber, fuel, carbon capture, and renewable energies to an astounding degree, but only if, and I capitalize that, if they are allowed, encouraged, and valued by society. Only if they are granted a pass from industrial allegiance and sublimation. Those of us who presume to lead do not need followers. I need to repeat that. Those of us who presume to lead do not need followers. Instead, we need to make of ourselves cheering sections. We need to applaud those common individual curiosities, enthusiasms, and intrigues stemming from nature, those which invite aggregation. We need to grow a galaxy of small farmers, many of which will enthusiastically include animal power to get the work done. Here we are with this curiosity we call animal power at a time when the world needs us. Lines in hand, we must think as wide as we can and value the human touch in communion with nature. We all have work to do. Thank you.